Okay, good evening and welcome to the final meeting of the administrative year of Folkestone Hythe Joint Transportation Board. Please note this meeting is being streamed live to the internet, so could please all members ensure that their microphone is set to mute unless they are speaking, as this helps to reduce the any background noise. We move on to apologies.
Thank you, Chair. We have a few apologies. Councillors Tim Prater, Susan Carey, Jenny Hawkins and Conor McConville, who we have Councillor Tony Cooper substituting.
Excellent. I should also point out, you may have seen your emails or not, but unfortunately KCC Highways also send apologies as they're still out in the district trying to resolve the mess left by the wind and rain. Item number 2 on the agenda, are there any declarations of interest? I see none. We'll move on then. Item 3, the minutes of the last meeting, pages 5 to 8 of your pack. Go through page 5, 6, 7, and page 8 was blank for your noting purposes. So can I have a proposer and seconder for the minutes?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you, Jackie. And seconder?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Polly. So is that agreed? Excellent. Okay, so we move on then to item 4. I'm moving swiftly through the agenda. I'm aware Mason are on the telly later. Our last representatives in Kent in the FA Cup. For those of you that follow football, I wish I didn't after yesterday, I must admit. But anyway, item number 4, proposed parking restrictions for Folkestone Hythe District Council. I believe that's you, Fred.
Good evening, councillors. I should have Paul Thompson around, who will be presenting this report.
Yeah. So I was just having a few technical issues getting on. I take it you've all read the proposal, so if you've got any questions on any of the items, then do please let me know.
Are there any questions? I've got one question in relation to number 4, the motorcycle parking for New Street.
Yeah.
Is it possible? I mean, rather than lose a parking space, there is the area which is almost like a little cul-de-sac, Bradston Road and New Street at the end there by the planters that were put in by the Bradston Association about 15 years ago, and so it's not a through route for traffic. But there's quite a large area there. Is there any possibility the motorcycle parking could be put there so we don't lose any existing parking spaces?
I would have to have a word with KCC Highways because obviously it's footway there, but I can certainly inquire.
Jackie.
Thank you, Chair. Photo 3, which is I'd call it the slip road that goes down to Sunny Sands. Excellent that we're putting these proposals in because vehicles are parking down there and it's stopping the rescue vehicles getting down. I'm just wondering how quickly we can get that into place, please.
I'd hopefully start on any proposals before the end of the financial year. So certainly sort of within the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'd be looking to go out to statutory consultation.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Rory.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I wanted just to pick up on the Coolidge Lane item by the school, photo 5. Quite understand why this would be requested. In the past, when I've made inquiries about parking outside schools, I've been told it's actually really difficult to enforce because there is an expectation that parents and others may stop to take their children into school. We had a similar issue a few years ago, I remember, with the primary school in Coolidge Lane as well, which was causing some difficulties for residents in Bathurst Road. I'm just wondering whether there's something changed in what local authorities can now do around parking restrictions near schools, or whether this is, this is not actually going to make much difference. Can anyone give any further information on that?
Yeah, well, this is for a loading. This is really to stop sort of like vehicles parking for sort of more periods of time, because you are allowed to let people out and pick people up even in a loading ban. It's to prevent the people from waiting longer than as necessary, really.
So if even in a loading ban, you can still let people in and out, how's that going to work in practice? How's that going to be enforced, if it is? Because I'm just wondering whether going from a normal waiting restriction to a loading ban is actually going to achieve anything in addition to what the current restrictions achieve.
Yeah, I did have my reservations on this one, because to myself it was very similar to the footway parking ban that I wanted along Dymchurch Road outside Martello car park, and I was quite categorically told that we've already got a yellow line restriction there and it's enforceable. But I think this one is really to stop the people waiting, picking up for school children. It does make enforcement a lot easier when it's a different restriction. The way the actual restrictions are enforced, it's a lot quicker to enforce on a loading restriction than it is on a yellow line restriction. Just the way the process is done on the handhelds, it's been like that ever since I started in enforcement back in sort of 2008. Don't know why it's that way. It's just it's done as what we call an instant ticket. So there's very little information that you initially put into the handhelds. So it really does help from an enforcement point of view.
Chairman, I wonder whether after this is introduced, whether we could have a report back to JTB, say a year later, with a bit of an update, because I mean, I can see it going either way. I can see it either, having some difficulties, or indeed it could be the solution around some other schools. Now, I recognise it won't be around every other school, because the circumstances would be different and the nature of the roadside environment would be different. But I think it would be quite interesting to get an update back to this board, if it goes ahead. I mean, and it would have to be, say, a year after it actually starts rather than a year from now. But would that be possible?
Yeah, I think we could look at some sort of report. Obviously, it's a bit difficult if there's compliance, because then we won't be able to look at penalty charge notice numbers. But we can certainly get sort of the views from both the school and enforcement, who obviously patrol at that time. And if the school notice an improvement, then yeah, we can certainly feed that back for sure.
And it would be useful, sorry to prolong it, Dylan, but it would be useful to report back on any objections from local residents, because I mean, the one thing I'm quite conscious of, if you've got a loading ban, household deliverers may be impeded, and that may not apply so much here, because it looks as if it's going to be a fairly limited length of the curb, but in other places that would also be quite important. So I mean, yeah, I recognise, even if there's been compliance and therefore there's almost nothing to report, that in itself tells us something quite interesting about this approach. So I think it would be helpful to have whatever we can, just as an update, 12 months on. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
is there a time period, Paul, for, I mean, currently we've got the no waiting restrictions at the school. Is there a fixed time when that's in operation? And what hours will the loading ban be in operation? Will it be a sort of 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or is it just during, school hours? How will that operate?
possibly looking at just sort of during the school hours, so 8:30 till 4, let's say. Haven't really sort of looked at sort of where we'd go with it from there, but that's my initial sort of thinking on that one.
Can I also add, Chair, that KCC will start moving traffic enforcement pretty soon, and we can now make applications for static cameras outside schools. So that's one area where we'll be looking to make an application for, because we've received so many complaints about parking there. So we're just looking at everything we could throw in to stop the problems.
Yeah, I think it's and as identified in the footway and verge parking ban. We're constantly getting in our mailbag issues around schools and the issue of vehicles either clogging up the system or parking on verges or causing problems on verges where they're trying to overtake each other. I remember the problems that happened around Linksway. Is there? I don't know how to say to work this, but is there scope for the more targeted enforcement around schools during the school periods of pick up and drop off?
Yes, so that's exactly what we do now. We target schools, but we've got so many schools, so we don't have the number of officers to be outside every single school every single day. But we try and prioritize, especially the one in Coolidge Lane. That's one school that we regularly visit, but it's difficult for the enforcement officers. The loading ban will help, because that would mean they can issue instant PCNs rather than having to wait 5 minutes on the yellow line. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking to introduce there. But as I said, with the moving traffic as well coming, we're looking to make an application to KCC for some static cameras out there as well, because they've already appointed a contractor to look at moving traffic enforcement.
And if the loading ban works, could that be rolled out to other areas where we've got similar problems?
Yes, certainly something we could look into, but I believe the static camera enforcement would work better. So if KCC can pick that up in the next few months or so, then yeah, we will be making applications for schools.
Any other questions from anybody? No. Okay, it's got the recommendations 6.2, 6.3. Are we happy to? Our comments are noted. Excellent. Okay, yeah. So moving on then. So unfortunately, we're now in this kind of bizarre scenario where we don't have any officers from KCC to look at the items coming up. But we'll go through them and we'll feed back any comments that are raised. And if Paul is able to, Paul and Fred are able to assist on anything, it would be much appreciated. But recognise that we're kind of limited in scope what we can actually address here, other than to raise any particular issues. So moving on then to item 5 in Appendix A, which is the road, footway and cycleway renewal and preservation schemes. Are there any issues under Appendix A that people want to raise? I see none. Okay, moving on to Appendix B, drainage. Should be several pages longer after today, maybe, but nonetheless, are there any issues that people want to raise under Appendix B? Okay, I see none. Appendix C, street lighting. Number of these works are scheduled for completion at the end of next month. Are there any issues with Appendix C? Tony.
Can I just ask that when that's done next month, can we have a list of what has actually been done? And can we have a review in respect of, because I know at least one property in Dymchurch where it's been missed off, and it's not a question of being missed off by our staff, it's been missed off by the contractor. So could we have a review in that in due course, please? That would be appreciated.
Okay. Tony.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. I'm in a bit slow in the machine today. I'm trying to do two things at once with the agenda, and I'm failing badly. Drainage, just so you know, my phone has been glowing today with the concerns of people, quite rightly. And my friend over here, Tony, will know about all this. Uden Road, I've had phone calls for the Deerings. New Romney's flooded and at Yorkstone sewer arm. I've had numerous conversations with Southern Water. They appear to be doing what they said they're going to do. They're going around people sure their kit's functioning. It shows you the kit's not fit for purpose. So I'm working with our officers, and we're going to do for the marsh. And I'm just trying to get the first meeting off the ground to assess how we manage surface water better, because this is a warning. It's a wake-up call. This is only going to get worse, and we must make sure before we get the really heavy stuff comes down, we get better kit in place where we can. So all I wanted to say was there's work going on. Okay.
Yeah, I think the one at Dymchurch failed today, didn't it? The wastewater pumping.
No, I don't think it failed. What I've been told, nothing failed. It was overwhelmed, and that's a hint of what's to come. Okay.
No, that's very helpful. So we'll ask for some to come back on Appendix C, just what's been done, and an update would be useful. Moving on to Appendix D, transportation and safety schemes. Under D2, I can tell you that the Cheriton Radnor Park Active Travel Scheme, which Rory and I have been involved with since we got elected in 21. It's been ongoing. That will now start on the 15th of April, the first parts. We've been informed. So if it sticks to the timeline, that's when it's intended to start the work, but it will take a substantial amount of time for all of the works to be done right the way down to All Souls School. So they're going to start Folkestone Central, moving on down. But that'll be an ongoing piece of work, so it doesn't cause too much misery to everyone with the closure of all the roads at once. I'll see Jackie first, then Polly.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask that when the workshop or updates are done, that I'm included, because I was included as the KCC in the very original idea where they were going to put parking in, etc. And the three of us were involved in that, and then I seem to have been completely sidelined. So if you can ensure that I'm included in that, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Will do. Oh, definitely. Polly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, also on that workshop, I just wondered if there'd be anything similar for sort of ward councillors or FHDC members, or just to get that information out there.
Yep, no, I absolutely. I think that it does appear you've been missed off in the post-engagement exercise that's happened, and I will feed that back to officers and make sure that you're fully informed as to what is now going to be happening.
That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, because it does look. I mean, Roy and I have seen some of the pictures, although they tell us these aren't the final pictures, because obviously they're artist impressions of what's going to happen, and it does look a little bit different to what was originally proposed, and then also the revised proposals. So there are some changes. So I'll certainly make sure that you're
okay,
what's happening.
Yeah, that would be good. Appreciated.
Okay. Anything then on that was D2, D3 casualty reduction measures?
Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead, Tony.
Lid Road, Hammond's Corner. This has been raised again at the SSG group last week. And again, I'm hitting a brick wall at the moment with the NRS, Nuclear Restoration Service, as their new name, but they're still saying they've got no money. But pressure's going to build on this. We've got 1,500 lorry movements which are due to come down for the inert material, the Goliath 2 crane to be built on site for Station A. That's due to happen this year in some form. I'm not so sure, but they're running behind. But by and large, that's only the start of it. The work coming through will be absolutely massive. The stuff coming through that route at that junction, and we really got to try and keep pressure. And I will keep pressure on the NRS to cough up 3 million quid. Peanuts to them, small fortune to us. And we have the plans in place. We're just waiting to find someone for the money. Okay.
And I will say on the next one, on the Cheriton Road, Cherry Garden Avenue junction, unfortunately, it looks like there's not going to be a massive amount of work done in the foreseeable future. Originally, it was going to be part of the whole integrated into the active travel scheme. Unfortunately, that's not been possible to do because they've come up against complications, whether on the rephasing of lights, the new layout. There will be a change to the layout slightly, but unfortunately, we're still going to have this skew width crossing, and it is one of the biggest accident black spots in the county. So I am putting pressure on there. I know Rory as well has raised it, but it is one of those issues that I guess unless we compulsory purchase all the properties on the corner, I'm not sure how we get around it. But they are still looking at what is possible to do. I don't know if you've got anything to add, Rory, from certainly our recent conversation we had with officers around that junction.
No, not really. I mean, you've summarised it accurately, and I think it's a difficult one because it's also about making sure that traffic flows smoothly, and there are various proposals that, on the face of it, look as if they make a simpler junction arrangement, but traffic would just simply back up, and we've had those discussions with officers.
But I mean, following on from the junction, there will still be the 20 mile an hour zone coming in along Cheriton Road, starting at Station Road, going down just past Ashley Avenue. So that whole stretch will become a 20 mile an hour zone, which has shown, certainly on the research, that on average, people's speed drops by about 3 to 4 miles per hour, and potentially there are less accidents. And it will hopefully encourage more pedestrians and cyclists to use the area, is the intention. But we'll see if the proof is in the pudding. Anything else under Appendix D3? No? Okay, move on to developer funded works, Appendix E. I see nobody. I've got two now. Alan first, then Polly.
Thanks, Dylan. I was just in the papers from the previous meeting. There was a section under E for parish council funded schemes, which had our Ivy Church speed limit change on it. That section doesn't exist in this reports pack, and I just wanted to make sure that project hadn't sort of disappeared somewhere. That's now been paid for, and I think we're expecting that to actually be completed in March, but it hasn't yet happened. So I just want to make sure it's not fallen down a hole.
No, I will follow up on that. I think it would be useful as well, as more and more parishes are developing their HIPs, that we include some of, not necessarily everything that's funded, but certainly things that are on the horizon. So even unfunded schemes, I think it would be useful to highlight what's been considered.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
And so I will definitely feed that back because the information is there and we should have it. Polly.
That's just a question really regarding the Folkestone seafront development, because there were some works carried out late last year installing the roundabout and the traffic islands down there. My understanding is, and I was just looking for confirmation of this really, is that that's a temporary arrangement, and that as the development continues and the things are finalised, there will be a raised table there and it will be more cycle and pedestrian friendly and so on. But it was just to see confirmation and timescale for that, please.
Unless you move the chair.
Yeah, no, I will certainly get some information for you on that. As I understood it, I mean, I've raised this about a couple of developments. They tend not to do the works until they're completely done because they get churned up then by any heavy vehicles or whatever. In terms of it sort of preempts the actual work being done. So, but I will come back to you with that information. I'll find out from officers and we'll make sure it's included in the response within the minutes. I've got Rory, then Jackie.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. If it's any consolation to Alan, things can still be on the list and yet still appear to have been forgotten about. And one of those, and I'll bang on about it every time until something happens. Cheriton High Street, Cheriton Approach. Colleagues here will have heard me talk about it before. I see we've now got to the stage of developer looking into signals. Well, I'm very pleased to hear it, but I want them to do more than just look into the signals. I'd quite like them to change the signals so they've got press buttons for pedestrians to get across that very, very busy and challenging interchange. So it's underway, but I'll raise it, so hopefully it goes into the minutes that once again I've spoken about it, and hopefully we might get somewhere in the end.
Definition of ongoing. It's a bit like the seafront development got planning 20 odd years before a brick was laid. That was ongoing. So yeah, I'm not sure how long ongoing actually is, but it's a valid point, Rory, that you've raised. Jackie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the seafront development, my understanding is that where that roundabout, etc., is going to be a shared, what they call a shared space. So it's pedestrians, cycles, and cars. So I think the likelihood is that won't be a raised roundabout. But if you could get some confirmation on that, that would be very, very useful, and maybe put my mind at rest, because I'm not particularly keen on shared spaces.
Depends who you're sharing them with, I guess, but yeah, no, absolutely.
I've seen too many accidents with pedestrians not knowing, especially with electric cars, bless them, because they're so quiet.
Indeed, and there's those dreaded e-scooters as well, which seem to think that they can use all space available. Any other comments on Appendix E? No? Okay, we move on then. Appendix F, bridge works. I see none. Appendix G, traffic systems. No, okay. And nothing on Appendix H. Appendix I now, street works. Any comments in relation to street works on page 25, 26 of your pack? Tony?
Yes, we have a major problem down the coast with the proposed works from Southern Gas Networks to close the coast road for 17 weeks. Again, I have a glowing phone to show what interest is taken up locally. I'm in this. I've had a very good. I must give our staff a praise here. Street scene. I've been talking to them, Streetworks, quite a bit, and they put me in. I've got in touch with Southern Gas Networks. Have been very helpful, and we're having meetings to discuss how we're going to make this work for the community. Yes, a gas main's got to be put in. We understand that. But I'm trying to get emergency traffic through. Everything from the lifeboat station to get crew in, nuclear power station, blue lights, carers, Meals on Wheels. But I think it'll need a 24-hour banksman down there and letting people in to have authority. So that's the plan, is it'll be closed for 17 weeks. We'll put signage up, I hope, showing the shops are still open in Battery Road and in Taylor Road. But at the end of the day, you must have emergency access. Okay?
Good point. I mean, it's worth noticing up to 17 weeks. And what we've noticed with some of the planned utility works is they've actually been finishing ahead of schedule. So hopefully
Dylan, I have to say to you, this is shingle, Dylan.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go that quick. When 4D did the shallow drainage thing, they all ran over because they got a horrible shock when they came back in the morning and saw their trenches full of water because the tide was in. And if they don't cover it properly, shingle will move, and then we're having bigger problems. We have to relay parts of the road. So I'd rather than get it right. It has to be right, but at the end of the day, it's got to work for my community as well. Okay.
I think another concern I always have sometimes when there's large works that go on like this is the communication with residents. So I think that there should be a duty either on KCC or the utility company to inform local residents of actually what's happening, rather than just a notice on a lamppost. And I think that's one of the things that I've picked up certainly in the last 12 months. Some works have been missed.
Yeah, it'd be really useful if they put these things up, information up, and social media. But as I say, at the moment, they're working with us, so I can't complain. But we managed to we were going to sleeve the old gas main, which was laid in 1938, cast iron. Now, next to salt water, it might be a touch thin in places. So they were going to sleeve that with a yellow polypropylene and going down the centre. But that's now been dumped because they found it's up to a metre down. And when you're digging that deep, it's going to take a very long time to cover things. So we're now looking for a shallow main. I'm not quite sure it's in the road or in the pavement, but we're looking for a shallow main and put a completely new one in, which is the correct answer. So they come to the right answer, but hopefully you could be right. It might reduce the time working on it. And that'll be a bonus because we're running into the summer holidays.
Yeah, no, definitely. Tony, that is.
Thank you. We had a similar situation to this down in Jefferson Lane recently in St. Mary's Bay. And because of the road being blocked, the actual detour was several miles, and a number of people have raised issues about being concerned with accidents or fire brigade, etc. We're looking at this thing in Greatstone, as Tony's just suggested. Can we have a look at the alternative routes whereby the emergency service can quickly access properties? I mean, it's a suggestion.
There is only one route, and guess what? It's Hammond's Corner. And when you've got 1,200 staff at the power station going the same way, plus everything else, it's going to be hysterical. And I hope that's not the time when those 1,500 lorries turn. So I hopefully that's all we have. We can only do it one or two ways. There is no choice unless we use helicopters or by sea. So we'll have to see what happens.
Okay, Tony, that's great. But I thought I'd raise it anyway.
Yeah. Fair enough. Thanks, Dave. Yep.
Jackie.
Thank you. Slightly different subject. And coming back to what you've just said, Dylan, it's about communication with the residents. I noticed that for the Risborough Lane, which is going to be closed for about a month in various tranches, it looks like they're going to be closing some of the bus stops as well. We need some way or to work with the bus company to ensure that people know where the nearest bus stop will be at this point, because unfortunately what seems to happen is they suddenly put a notice on the bus stop saying not being used due to emergency services, and we've had several problems around closures like this where it has then isolated people because they can't get to the nearest bus stop. So they need some time and some information so that they can actually rearrange their transport issues. Thank you.
Really good point, Jackie. I think that
if I can just say there, Dylan, our meeting today was proposed meeting today was postponed with Stagecoach to discuss exactly what Jackie's talking about. The alternative routes and how we're going to tell people how it works and where the emergency bus stops will be and the like. I think Jackie's got a very good point. It's all about communication.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Any other points on Appendix I? Okay, so that concludes that agenda item. Agenda item 6 is the Bus Service Improvement Plan, BSIP, and the National Bus Strategy Funding Update. So this gives an outline of everything that's happened previously from when the government introduced BSIP. Royal We, in terms of Kent County Council, applied for significant funding, and unfortunately, from the 213 million that was applied for, we got 35 million, which was still better than nothing, but it meant a lot of the works that we wanted to do weren't able to be carried out, and they came with very tight restrictions, which are outlined in 1.6 of the report. Then, in terms of moving forward, you can see some of the initiatives that have been done, some of the future funding that's coming in for 24-25. It is worth noting at this point, and I have been asked to make members aware that nothing exists beyond 25 at the moment. Now it's hoped that there will be something in place, and the county council is looking at that, and that there is an offer on the table potentially to make an application around. But at the moment, this funding stops in 25. So a lot of the proposals in there in terms of the local services that are supported within Appendix A, and a lot of the other works that are going on, are finite in terms of the actual period. So I'll now open it up to everyone. Polly, I saw you first.
Thank you. I found this paper really helpful, actually. It filled in a lot of gaps about what's been happening in this arena over the last couple of years. And it was helpful in that understanding that 2/3 of that funding is for capital projects, and it's not there just to support services, although there has been some support for commercially struggling services. The bit that caught my eye was the issue of engagement, because I'm not seeing that our local residents have been engaged with, but that I wasn't around, I admit, when this consultation would have happened. But I'm concerned that we don't seem to have representation on, as a district that is, on the partnership scheme monitoring group, I think it's called. There's so many letters, I'll try and get them in the right order. I'm just very concerned. I mean, the situation's changed since that consultation happened, since obviously with the cuts last year. But I just think our representation is absolutely essential, and I'm really anxious that we get that sorted out as a matter of priority. And it seems to be at two different levels. There's the monitoring group and the district focus groups, and I just think that we need to be clear about what representation we need where, just to make sure that our voice has been heard and our residents' voice has been heard.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that it's an important part, because when we actually look at services that are directly funded by BSIP, of course, there are other services where pressure has been applied and Stagecoach have responded. And I thank the district certainly for some of their actions on that. And so I think it's really important that the district do have a voice and fully involved in the engagement process. Tony.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. With our subsidised services at KCC, my one on the Marsh, number 11, is so precious to us that I don't want to do anything that might risk that in our hardened times of trying to find pennies from everywhere. But I've been having very good conversations with the Bromley Marsh Community Hub and our officers at County, including Steve. We had a meeting last week. We're putting together a dial-a-ride scheme for the marsh, and it's looking very promising. I'm not going to say it's going to happen. I've been here too many times over the last 10 years, but it's looking really good, and that will cover the whole of the marsh, Tony. So it'll be all over the place, and if that comes off, that will be a real breakthrough, because I don't think it's going to harm our current service in Stagecoach, which goes to Ashford back to Folkestone. But this is about getting people to hospital, getting people for tests, out to Buckland for scanning on cancer scares and the like. So it's looking very promising. So I'll report back in the future how we're doing. But it is a breakthrough.
Excellent. That's certainly good news. Jackie.
Thanks, Chair. We know that we've been putting pressure on Stagecoach, actually at both levels, at KCC and district side. Some of the services have come back in, but my inbox is still red hot for not just the services that have been cut, but the services that have continued, whose reliability has fallen through the floor. So as much as there is supposed to be a bus service there, people can't rely on it anymore. So I'm just asking that we keep the pressure on with constructive conversations with Stagecoach to see how we can help improve. But also, we've now got to the point, as Tony raised, is we now start to have to think outside of the box with dial-a-rides. Folkestone Town Hall, for example, the council has now got an electric bus thanks to KCC, and we're looking at whether that can be used to actually help move residents where they need, because there are some areas where the buses have been cut, where we have tranches of slightly older or mobility impaired people who are now imprisoned. They cannot get out. So I'm just saying, if we all get our heads together, think outside the box, bring those ideas together, I think we may be amazed at what we can actually do for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Tony Cooper next.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. I'd like to endorse what we just heard there. I'm Tony before as well. And I mean, my inbox is inundated as well. And people are asking me what's happening with the Sunday service. I mean, for example, I did an email last week regarding someone having to go to hospital on the Sunday, and there was no way they could get there. They actually got there by a lift, but on the way back, they had to go from the hospital into Hospital City Centre, into town centre, and then from there get a bus to Folkestone. From there, you got a train to Folkestone, and then a bus from Folkestone, and it took about 4.5 hours. That shouldn't be happening in this day and age. And I was wondering if you could have a look into that, or put some pressure on that way as well, please.
I think that's, you know, even on the services that aren't supported, we've seen that, for example, in Broadmead Village, where services don't run on a weekend or only available Monday to Friday for residents, and yeah, it's a real problem with weekend services. Tony Hills.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. If I can just say one small word in mitigation for Stagecoach. I went down to Folkestone last week, and I had 3 sets of traffic lights to go through roadworks on the 259. Now that must have put 20 minutes on a journey time. How do you run a bus service when you've got so many roadworks going on at once? It's just very, very difficult. And I'm not saying let them off the hook, but that could be a reason why, partly a reason why, that they're struggling so much. We've got so many roadworks going on. How can you plan a schedule?
Fair point. It certainly does seem a bit like a slalom run on certain roads at the moment with the works and the traffic lights. A bit of a nightmare. There's also on Appendix A, there are a number of school services. And I don't know if Rory, you want to say anything about that, because I don't. Whilst they are supported, I would hope that these wouldn't be at risk, you know, post 25. We've got the Hawkins to Brockhill Park, the Folkestone Hawkins, you know, the 971, 974, which are specifically school services. I don't know if you've got anything to add from your portfolio, as it were, at KCC.
I haven't. As in all cases, you know, services will run when there's a requirement for them, and whether they're supported services or whether they are market services. I made myself slightly unpopular about a year ago, I think, when I went to Folkestone Town Council and said the best thing we can do to keep bus services running is to use the buses. And the people who routinely don't go into work now because they work from home, the consequence, it's a free choice, but the consequence is that clearly there are fewer people on the buses. I know on trains it's very similar on certain days, and at the end of the day, Stagecoach are running a bus service, and they need to be able to get the revenue to make them run, and it's a challenging time because there are still a number of services that I'm aware that have not recovered to anything like the pre-pandemic days. The good news for all of us, I guess, is that there will be further extensions, as we understand, to the £2 cap. Now that's, again, it's got to be a temporary measure because, you know, subsidy money is our money as taxpayers, and that's not going to happen all the time. But it's good that it'll help, hopefully, get a few more services back onto a sustainable footing.
I think it's worth just on the £2 fare. It's worth noting that behind the £2 fare, obviously fares are still increasing. So if ever that did get removed in the future, we would see huge fare increases for the buses, which is a real fear for those people that have been, you know, attracted back onto the buses. Indeed, with the district campaign, you know, use it or lose it. And you know, if that cap then suddenly disappears and we end up with bus fares, you know, into double figures, it's going to be quite prohibitive. But they, unfortunately, in real terms, they're going up behind the scenes because of fuel increases, driver costs, and all the rest. I see Polly, then Tony Cooper.
Yeah, hi. Just really to clarify, because I know there are people listening in on this meeting, or will come and see it later, who are particularly interested in the allocation of the funding. So basically, the Appendix A is the Tranche 1 funding, and the Appendix B is Tranche 2 funding. So it has all been allocated. Is that the case? There's nothing that we know that we've had or we know is coming that hasn't yet been allocated.
No, that's correct. Yes,
that is correct. Okay,
yeah. So
thank you.
all that, but so it's been allocated, particularly on the capital program, but some of the schemes are still going on, as it were.
Right.
So, for example, the Penster Road bus priority system is going to be brought in very shortly, and a lot of the other capital programs haven't yet started, but will be doing.
And that is based on the consultations that took place 2 or 3 years ago. That fit into that.
There's a consultation just finished on some of them, so they've only just literally finished the consultation very recently.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Was going to make, certainly in terms of capital program ones, specific schemes may require individual consultations in addition to the wider consultation for the BSIP funding. Yeah. Tony Cooper.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. While we're having conversations with the stagecoach, etc., can we please impress upon them that the service they're providing should be reliable? Because at this moment in time, at every cancellation, that's causing someone grief. And obviously, with a lack of information, especially at bus stops where the buses are, it would appear that the actual app is not working correctly. And of course, you've got to be tech savvy to use it. And a general question I've been asked is this: why is there no actual bus information signs at the bus stops? That you would see, for example, in parts of London or other parts of the country, which tells you where the bus is. Because if the transponders were working, you know where the bus is. I mean, people are arriving at the bus stop, and sometimes the buses are running early, and they've gone past or whatever. And another thing that was asked was, can we please impress as well that we might not be youngsters on this web call, but there are people out there that used to be who are young, like we used to be at one time, that would like to go out, for example, on a Saturday night, etc. But at this moment in time, you can't do nothing because you've got to get back for the 10 o'clock bus. And of course, on top of that, if I may, there's also another issue in respect of reliability. If you're travelling somewhere to get a connection and your bus is missed off or whatever, you've got a problem. So can we also please impress that upon stagecoach as well, if you don't mind?
Yes, certainly the original BSIP application, there was a number of things were put forward for the automatic electronic bus information. Unfortunately, because the funding wasn't there, they never took that on. And Stagecoach, I know, came back with, they've got a text system which they have on each bus stop. I think it's a paid for service. If people they don't have a free texting on their phone, it comes back and it's actually a cost to them. And of course, you're quite right on reliability in terms of connections and the effect it has. Frank.
That's better. Thank you, Chairman. 2 points. I'm given to understand that the number of pensioners using the buses now with their bus pass has dropped by 25% since COVID. Whether that's right or not, I don't know, but that's what I've been given to understand. The other thing I don't know whether it's right or not is that if Stagecoach runs a bus service that is in profit, they keep all that profit. They're not allowed to transfer some of that profit to a non-profitable route. It seems a strange way of doing business.
I would have to get back to you. As I understood it, certainly since the I think overall figures now are getting up towards pre-COVID levels. But I think we're 2 or 3% off. But I'll see if we've got any of those figures, particularly in relation to specific groups, such as use of the Freedom Pass, as it were, the pensioner pass, and also in terms of the question on profit. Again, I'll have to get back to you on that and see if we can get the information.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments raised on BSIP? Tony Hills.
Sorry, I've been muted myself. Just to support what Frank was saying, that if you've got fewer services, you are going to have fewer passengers. It's not as straightforward as it may seem. Our numbers are down, but so are our services pre-COVID. I've got routes that have been cut since then, so therefore they can't be used. But the idea of the £2 ticket is great, but if it goes on the summertime, because it's got to be in warm weather, because you're not going to get my pensioners out in November to February, freezing their legs off on a £2 ticket. So it's basically, it needs to be a summertime activity or spring summer as well. Okay.
Tony Cooper.
Just a quick one on what Tony was saying there, I quite agree. But can we also impress that in the summer, we're going to get visitors down here. And if the visitors are using the buses, the locals are going to be missing out. And could that be looked at as well? Just a little thought there.
I know you're absolutely right. There was always an issue. I remember chatting to a tourist once, and they said I think they were going to Rye on the bus, but didn't realise that it was the same bus. They just changed the number on the front when they got as far as Lyd. And so they actually got off the bus, and then oh no, you get back on. Okay. Any other questions in relation to BSIP or comments? I see none. I've not been notified of any other business. Anyone want to raise anything? I see. Oh, Frank, is that a legacy hand or?
Oh, no.
Okay. Right. So we now move on then
Oh,
to.
hang on. Oh, it was a new hand.
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, my mute button didn't want to work then. What I wanted to just raise was the county council is always saying they've got no money for doing this and that, and they've got a backlog of potholes and everywhere somewhere. I've noticed recently some of the work that's been done is absolutely appalling. They come along, they fill the pothole in a week or two, it's all out again. Surely, if they did a better job in the first place, they wouldn't have to spend so much money, keep going back and back and back. Around here, we've had one or two. There was one on the A20, just outside the Channel Tunnel, where they put some new tarmac around a manhole in the side of the road. That was last Thursday, and it's already coming out.
I think it would be useful for the next meeting for us to actually have an item on the agenda around the work on potholes and highway maintenance, specifically in relation to the district, because more often than not there are presentations done around work on potholes across a county-wide level, but I think it'd be really good to have something in relation to our district and have someone come and do a presentation on it at the next meeting if everyone is in agreement on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, Tony, you've got a comment.
I need to say, I mean, Frank's got a point, but it's my officers locally are very responsive and they're very good. But it's not going to say, depending on who you're working with, that's a problem. But I do think when we got problems like what Frank's discussing, we should notify our hierarchy that we're not happy. And I think information goes both ways. So our cabinet member, young Neil, needs to be told that we're not happy in this division or areas down here that if the quality is not up to snuff. And please, can you tell us what you're doing about it? Like new ideas, new practices, or whatever.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think that with especially there's an increase in work on potholes, which there is planned to be. Unfortunately, we still have the same number of stewards, and so they can't go and check all the work. So they need to be told if work is not being done or is up to scratch.
Yeah,
Rory.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, getting a presentation on it, I think, would be really helpful for all colleagues on the call. I mean, the one thing I'd say, I mean, Tony's absolutely right, but also I know the concern that Frank has raised is quite often raised, and sometimes, and I'm not saying this necessarily applies in the case that Frank's just described, but sometimes. What happens is that the temporary fix is made immediately, particularly where there's a safety problem. So the highway stewards themselves will have some kind of, ready mixed tarmac that they can just stick in a hole or around a manhole where otherwise there could be a sort of serious injury. And it's not designed to last. It's designed just to keep things going until the contractor can come and do a permanent fix. Now, I'm not saying that is the case, but if in the case that Frank has raised, but I know that it's often seen as a sort of very quick fix, and then people are concerned a few days later. But actually, it gets over the problem of somebody potentially getting a motorbike or bicycle tire stuck down a dangerous hole, and pending a proper repair. But equally, as Tony says, if there is what's supposed to be a permanent repair and it's not permanent, then it does need flagging up, because our contractors need to be accountable for that.
Okay, I've got Frank, Tony Hills, then Jackie. So Frank.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The one I was talking about outside the Channel Tunnel was done under traffic lights. So it wasn't just a temporary repair. There was a gang there doing it. On the other side of it, we had a road closure for a bit of patching and pothole filling. And they did a patch in the middle of the road and left 2 potholes right alongside it, quite deep ones. We reported it back to James, and he's come back and apologised for what's happened. And at the moment, it's a terrible mess, because we've got a spring that's running right down the middle of the road there, so it's going to be very difficult to do anything with it. Thank you.
Tony.
Yeah, all I was going to say was, and Rory's spot on, but and it's Frank. But my instructions to James in my area is safety comes first. That's all. If there's a pothole which is going to cause an accident, be it for a pedestrian, cyclist, or a motorcyclist, that has to take precedence. We've got a third less money, I think, on potholes, and we have to do the same amount of work. That's not easy, particularly with the amount of rain we've had recently to wash out those holes. So we are going to be struggling for a couple of months. But safety must come first. Whatever monies we have, safety cannot be compromised. And that's my instruction to James and Co. Thank you.
Jackie.
Thank you. I think a presentation would be an absolute excellent idea, because I've had some meetings recently with the highways staff who've been incredibly helpful, I hasten to add, explaining to me, how some of the materials work, etc., etc. But I think the interesting thing is that the temporaries are supposed to last approximately 3 months whilst they're waiting for the contractors. But unfortunately, we all know that it almost seems to be out of sight, out of mind. But I have been informed, which would hopefully come up on the presentation, they have some new jollop, for want of a better word, that they use that actually looks a little bit like the temporary stuff, but is permanent. So what we're looking at would not be the way that we used to see it. So when we see, oh, that's going to be temporary, actually, it's quite possible that that is a permanent fix now. And this is why I think it would be really good if we could have a presentation, and maybe with some photos, etc., which would be really, really useful.
I think a wider presentation. I mean, one of the other things that I get more, perhaps less people with a motor vehicle in my area, is around the pavements and repairs to pavements and the like, which is always a bigger problem, particularly for the elderly that might have falls. And then the other one that's sometimes raised is the verge repairs on more rural roads, where you've had the road washed away and it's quite dangerous at the sides. Not really potholes, but so I think it would be useful to have an overall presentation and understanding of what the priorities are. Obviously safety, as Tony says, but try and understand more what's been done, how it's been done, and as I said before, in relation to our district, I think it's really, really key, because we have a lot of messages that come out which are around county-wide messages, but it's not very helpful for us trying to understand what's been done locally, which is our priority, obviously. Any other points on this? Okay, so we kind of went a bit there. Well, my apologies. We went straight on to AOB, and we actually had item 7. I'm terribly sorry. Polly, I'll see you. Sorry.
Yes, so yeah, on this item. So I'm not quite sure how far we can get without KCC officers here, but I'll give it a go. But first and foremost, it was to say that residents are in favour of the Swiss medical development in Hythe, and they just want it to move forward now, really, after all the delays. But there has been concern over the condition that's been added over the introduction of a bollard. I think there's concern that there may be a rat run between Rage Road and the Boundary Road, Fort Road end of the development. And I think maybe something that could be considered in future is that there was some kind of consultation with local residents before such a condition is introduced, because I get the impression that that's where some of the problems and the local unrest, shall we say, is coming from. So it was just really to feed that back. As I understand it, the developer it's going to be an unadopted road, and the developer will be in control of that bollard. So I didn't want to introduce any other delay or bring up any send people back to survey or whatever, but it was just to make that point, really, that a consultation at an earlier stage would have been useful. And I think John's he's closer to the detail on this than me, so I shall let him speak.
Before you do, Jake, can I ask, did the parish council maybe wanted to speak on this? Is that correct?
Yes, he did. Unfortunately he got caught up in a Hythe Town Council meeting this evening. It was all rather late in the day when we worked out whether he was going to be allowed to speak or not. So but I think John can probably fill in some of the gaps.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Basically, just emphasising what Polly said, I've done quite a bit of work with the local residents. There are a number of meetings with them, and they're absolutely brilliant. They really want this development to happen because they're getting children going over there and antisocial behaviour. It's just the access. I think the developer's done a lot of work with Hythe Town Council, because that's the next step for this development. It's going to go in front of the Hythe Town Council. And as Polly just said, it is an unadopted road, and perhaps I think we don't want to go down survey route. We just want this to happen, really, but we want something that also works with the residents, not the residents in the new development, residents outside, which sometimes they get forgotten, don't they? The residents who live around. I think things seem to be moving in the right direction, and we just want to see this development happen for a change. It's quite nice, actually. The residents really, really brilliant.
I think the issue of unadopted roads, I think, is a long-term problem, particularly where we've got little estates or whatever. There's one, for example, down by Folkestone Sports Hall, where I got contacted by the residents, and they were like, well, we want more street lighting because we've got none. And of course, it's a private development as such, but it doesn't look like it. And it's, I think, an ongoing problem because there's no identifiable maps or communications that people can refer to even once they move into the area. For example, years on after, when they expect that it is the responsibility of the local authority. But certainly, if we can get something around what's needed here, it'd be really, really good. Any other comments? No. Okay. But finally, are there any other business? I see nothing. Okay then. Well, thank you very much. I think that's been a really good meeting. There's lots of things to feed back on, and I have to say, I will just say one thing about working together. So, one of the things that came up in the last week, a success after around 2 years of discussion and negotiation, was the hollyhocks at Hythe. I don't know if people are aware of this. It's funny, it even got some media coverage. Now, I know that local members of both district, county, and the town council have been fighting to get this resolved in terms of where the changeover happened on contract management for the area where the hollyhocks was or were, and have come back again. And there was an issue with they were all going to be, in effect, continually removed. Lots of negotiation, lots of discussion. I think it was really nice that and I hope that I apologise, officers, in the meeting, but there was an adult conversation between members of all the councils to try and get this resolved and for direction to be given. Because at the end of the day, officers sometimes need that direction and not to be pulled in different ways. And I think we managed to get the issue resolved, and I'm really, really pleased. I was involved. I know Rory's been involved. Neil was involved from the county side. Then, at the district level, there were various people, and at the local level, you had Andrew Walsh and Jenny Hawkins. So it's really, really good that we actually got a resolution that residents want and need, and that shows, I think, the benefits of when we do work together, we can achieve a serious amount and get things resolved for the benefit of all of the people that we represent. Tony, you got a hand?
Yeah, only I was trying to support what you're saying, really, because even out in the march, I was lobbied about the Hollyoaks, and it's great, and I think it's great because okay, they're a trip hazard, fine, but I thought our cabinet member for this played a blinder because he worked with common sense, and I think that's what it's all about: teamwork and common sense, and we still have our Hollyoaks, so that's great. And I must say, thank you, Dylan, for chairing the meeting. It's been a great meeting, positive. Again, you're quite right. Teamwork pays.
Thank you very much, Tony. So with that, I will close the meeting and have a good